Oh, thank you, that's enough. Oh, you guys are so sweet. Oh, thank you. Please, sit down, thank you. Welcome back to another video. If you're new here, I'm Trevor, and I am eternally uncool. If you're not new here, sup? How you doing? I make videos about music and music culture and anything that interests me. Mostly music right now. So if that sounds like something you're into, I highly recommend subscribing to the channel. When I was growing up, one of my dreams was to front a band. Now, you can chalk that up to one of two things: my deep love and passion for music and performance, or my inflated ego and narcissism. We don't need to get into which one it is now. That can wait. It's not important to the video. So when I get into a band, I usually get invested in the front person the most. The front person is like the representative of the band, the face, if you will. If the person front and center in your band is not interesting, then no one is going to be interested in your band. Who are you going to root for? Guitar player? Name one band where the guitar player is bigger than the singer. Eddie Van Halen. Besides him. Tom Morello. Him too. Pete Wentz. That doesn't count. He's a bass player. What I'm trying to say is the front person is very important, and they need to have personality. An iconic frontman has been a rarity in recent years. Sure, we have people like Gerard Way and Brendan Urie, but what about a band that's found fame in the last 10 years? Who's the greatest frontman of right now? Vote down below and I'll tally your answers live.
12 seconds later.
Okay, we're back. Here are the results. It looks like you all chose Matty Healy. What a coincidence. Matty Healy is probably the most talked about front person right now. What with his recent romance and breakup with Taylor Swift, his controversial podcast appearances, and his weird and intriguing stage performances. He's definitely a provocateur, which is something you don't see a lot of these days, at least not in pop music. A lot of pop stars try not to ruffle any feathers and keep it squeaky clean and keep a good public image. But Matty just does and says whatever the hell he wants. Sometimes he says really smart and profound things in interviews, and other times he's just a human shitpost. But there's something about him that draws people in just as much as it repels them. And today I'm going to take a deeper look into the artist known as Matty Healy and figure out whether or not he is the greatest front person of modern times.
And this is how it starts.
So you were born in 1975.
No.
Matty Healy was born in 1989 in Hendon, North London. His parents are actors Tim Healy and Denise Welch. Yes, that's right, just like every pop star right now, Matty Healy is a nepo baby. He would even appear as an extra on shows that his parents were on. But Matty didn't want to be an actor, no. He wanted to be a musician. His father was friends with people like Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits and Brian Johnson from AC/DC. And Matty is quoted as saying that his early proximity to such forces in music led him to believe that being a rock star was a possible reality for him. Now, I could talk at length about nepo babies, and I intend to, just not in this video. My videos are long enough as it is. What I will say is, I don't think that Matty is as big of a nepo baby as some other stars right now. His parents are TV actors, and TV actors on the BBC at that. British entertainment isn't as massive of an entity as Hollywood is, so it's a little bit more forgivable that Matty's parents are both actors. I mean, it's not like his parents were, I don't know, Johnny Depp or Ethan Hawke. And it would take almost a decade before Matty would even get a small taste of fame. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Matty was an only child for 12 years of his childhood, and he says a lot of that time was filled with video games, a lot of Michael Jackson videos, and a lot of singing and dancing to himself and just a lot of self-involvement like most only childs. And you can see a lot of Michael Jackson in the way Matty dances, and especially in a video like Sincerity is Scary.
I feel like you're running out of all the things like you for.
He would be privately educated at King's School, and then expelled for, I shit you not, starting a fight club. Starting a fight club. But not before winning the talent show singing Oasis, which is kind of funny in hindsight. He told local newspapers after the fact that he wanted to grow up to be a pop star. And gotta give it to the kid, he fucking stuck to that goal. After the Fight Club incident, Matty was transferred to Wilmslow High School, where he met his future bandmates. At Wilmslow, Matty Healy befriended George Daniel, Adam Hahn, and Ross McDonald. Ross McDonald. Can't talk today. Daniel's first impression of Healy was that he was the most outwardly passionate person at their school. They would form a band and perform around Greater Manchester under names like Talkhouse, The Slowdown, Big Sleep, and most famously Drive Like I Do, before settling on the 1975 after Matty saw it written in a Jack Kerouac book somewhere. And he would drop out of school in favor of pursuing music full-time. And like any good mother, Denise was worried about her son and his future, but his father said he believed in him unquestioningly. Unquestioningly. Can't talk today. But his father said he believed in him unquestioningly. What a nice man. The 1975 were initially rejected by every label that they submitted to. Executives were confused by the genre hopping, which is funny seeing how the eclectic sound is kind of a hallmark of the band. But the band needn't worry too long, because their manager, Jamie Oburn, would start his own independent label, Dirty Hit Records. And the rest, as they say, is history. After Oburn started Dirty Hit, the 1975 would release 4 EPs in rapid succession. Face Down and Sex in 2012, and Music for Cars and 4 in 2013. These EPs would include future hits like The City, Sex, and Chocolate, as well as fan favorites like Antichrist and Me. These EPs also got the young band a lot of attention. Influential DJ Zane Lowe would be the first to play them on the radio. Almost immediately after the release of the 4th EP, they would release their self-titled debut album. The album would see success with songs like Chocolate and Sex getting a lot of radio play, as well as hits like Girls and Robbers. Healy said the album was heavily inspired by John Hughes' movie, calling it a sort of soundtrack to his teen years. The album had its fair share of good and bad reviews, like any album. They would even be nominated for Worst Band of the Year, along with pop punk boy band 5 Seconds of Summer. But that wouldn't deter them, oh no. They were just beginning. In 2016, the band would release their sophomore album, I Like It When You Sleep, For You Are So Beautiful, Yet So Unaware of It. A mouthful of a title if I ever heard one. This was their breakthrough into the mainstream. Songs like The Sound and Love Me proved their pop credentials, while Change of Heart and Somebody Else showed their emo side. They would experiment with sounds, mixing R&B and 80s synth and 2010s indie sleaze. And Matty would experiment with big boy substances. Songs like Ugh would talk about his addiction, but nobody really knew the extent of it, at least not the audience and the listeners. After touring the album, Matty would spend 7 weeks in Barbados in an inpatient rehabilitation clinic. He mentioned this time involved equine therapy and reading Infinite Jest. A lot of artists suffer with addiction and substance abuse, but I don't think a lot of modern pop artists really talk about it as candidly as Matty Healy does. And when I say candidly, I don't mean that he talks about it in every single interview on some Oprah shit. What I mean is that he talks about it in his art, in songs like It's Not Living If It's Not With You. The Telegraph called him the closest thing millennials have to Jim Morrison. And I can kind of see that. He's a lot less fucked up than Jim Morrison. There's a flamboyancy that not a lot of modern rock frontmen have today. And that leads me into the next section. A lot of male rock stars and pop stars and performers in general seem to keep a little bit of machismo about them. Even pretty boys like Adam Levine have to stay tatted and jacked so they don't get defined by their comparatively wimpy lyrics. It wasn't until very recently that we saw a change in this perception. People like Harry Styles wearing dresses and rappers like Lil Nas X coming out and being very flamboyant about it. But Matty Healy was always the least macho rock star, in a good way. In a GQ interview in 2019, Matty Healy called himself quite feminine, stating he didn't know much about masculinity since he wasn't really involved in it. It's very refreshing for a rock star to take this approach, especially for someone like me. I was never very masculine or macho. Obviously, I wasn't into sports or shit like that. I liked reading and art and music. I was very sensitive. There weren't a lot of rock stars for me to look up to in middle school and high school. I had Gerard Way and that was it. At least until Matty Healy. He really proved to me that I didn't have to be macho. I didn't have to be jacked like Adam Levine. I could be a skinny little rat boy who liked poetry. He's not gay. He might be bi. No one's really sure. He's kissed a lot of dudes. But that doesn't mean nothing. What man hasn't kissed his homies on the lips? What? Don't lie to me. He dated Halsey and FKA Twigs and Taylor Swift. And he was in a serious relationship with a woman for much of the band's early success. So maybe he's just straight? One of the things I really like about him is that you're not really sure. I love ambiguity. Ambiguity is intriguing. It keeps people guessing. And it keeps people from judging you on the outset. Everyone loves mystery. Any good artist is lying to you. The person you see on stage or in interviews is not who that person really is. It's a public persona. Matty Healy is known for his artistic persona. A mix of exaggerated narcissism, self-indulgence, and swagger. He will say things in interviews that are profound and smart and progressive, while also just saying things to get a rise out of his audience, whether that be at his concerts or on Instagram or Twitter. And I think that's something a great artist needs to do. They need to get a reaction out of their audience while it's clear that this is not what they really believe. Some people call Matty problematic, and they're not wrong, but I think that most persons in existence are problematic some of the time. Celebrities and musicians really get the brunt of this outrage, but I think we forget that despite the extravagant jobs that these people have, they're still people. And people say stupid shit sometimes. Matty has tweeted things in good faith, and the response to those tweets has been vitriolic, to say the least. He's a public figure. Of course, some of the things he says are gonna get vitriol. He gets a lot of shit for the things he says, like any other outspoken rock star. One of his recent controversies came about after an appearance on the Adam Friedland show. You know where I'm going with this. They talked about some questionable things, I will admit that, but Matty agreed to be on the podcast partly to get a reaction from his audience. He infamously said some things about the up-and-coming rapper Ice Spice, which pissed a lot of people off. And Matty apologized at concerts, deactivated his Instagram account. I think he does these things to keep it interesting and artistic. In the same statement as the apology to Ice Spice, he said, "I've had enough. I perform all the time and it's my job and I love doing this, but I can't perform off the stage anymore, as I just want to be a bloke. He admitted to taking things a little bit too far sometimes, which I think most of us do. I know I have, especially when I was drinking. And this isn't me trying to defend any of the things that Matty has said, but I am of the belief that these celebrities aren't demigods that should be put up on a pedestal and have to be perfect 100% of the time. But being a public persona, especially one as outspoken as Matty is, means you have a bullseye on you at all times. I think Matty is a showman, and his persona is part of the show. Everything he says and does is to service his art. He wants to get a reaction from his fan base, from his audience. I think that's what a rock star should do. You should challenge your audience, not keep them complacent. If you lead your audience to believe that you're this perfect person, then you will fall even harder the second you mess up. Matty Healy is the opposite of that. I don't think his fans see him as perfect. They see him as a rat. So when he does say something stupid, it's kind of par for the course. It's all part of his persona.
And I do make art. Thank you very much.
When it comes to an artist I'm interested in, I want to know what makes them tick. What inspires them? Who are their favorite bands? What books do they like? Are their heroes mid or not? These are the questions in my head when I discover a new artist. Matty Healy's influences are kind of all over the place, which makes sense for a band like the 1975 since their music is kind of all over the place. It's been reported that the first concert he ever went to was Michael Jackson during his History era. He listed 10 of his favorite albums for Louder Than War, citing artists as the aforementioned King of Pop, but also British hip-hop electronica act The Streets, as well as shoegaze icons My Bloody Valentine and post-hardcore legends Glassjaw, songwriter extraordinaire Carole King, and the artsy-fartsy Peter Gabriel. He also cites acts like Sigur Rós and Talking Heads as influences, which really shows in the 1975's instrumental tracks, as well as the video for It's Not Living If It's Not With You, which takes a lot of influence from the Stop Making Sense tour movie. When it comes to modern rock and pop stars, I feel like their influences range from the super interesting and cool to the very basic and mid. A singer like Harry Styles can reference Fleetwood Mac to the point that you start to believe he just discovered them yesterday and he wants everyone to know about it. But Matty Healy seems like he has a deep love for bands like Glassjaw and MBV. You hear it in songs like The Post-Hardcore Inflected People, as well as the shoegazy sadness of the self-titled album. I would go as far to say that Matty Healy has the most interesting artistic influences of any pop star right now. Now, fight anyone on that. This is gonna be a long-ass video. I can already tell. Matty Healy is known for his showmanship and the things he does on stage. Obviously, he's a musician. You can usually see him with a bottle of wine and a cigarette, or more recently with raw meat or doing push-ups or something. And he's very meta, which is something I like. He acknowledges that what he does on stage and who he is off are two separate people. Matty plays the part of the self-indulgent, self-aware rock star. He's quoted as saying, "I do the Jim Morrison thing quite a bit, but I know that you know that I know that this isn't real. I'm so aware of the vocabulary of rock and roll." He plays upon rock star cliches. He is this ridiculous buffoon on stage, a far cry from his soft and quiet private self. He's quoted as saying, "It's a joke, but the music isn't a joke." He takes his art very seriously, but not himself, which I really like. One of my turnoffs is people who take themselves way too seriously. People who have this grandiose idea of themselves. And I feel like a lot of rock and pop stars take themselves very seriously. They have this image to uphold and this preconceived idea of who they are. But Matty Healy says, look at me, I'm a knob on stage. We're all in on the joke. None of this is real except the music. The music is what's real.
And it's about time.
Okay, so we looked at Matty Healy's background, his influences, his persona, his controversies, his substance abuse, all in the pursuit of answering one question. Is Matty Healy the greatest frontman of the modern era? And I think a lot of you might not like my answer. Matty Healy is a necessary figure in not just popular music, but popular culture. In a landscape that is full of manufactured personalities that are heavily curated by a label to be unproblematic and perfect, Matty Healy is one of the few who eschews all that in favor of being an artist. It's almost like performance art in a way. He'll do and say things to shock you, but anyone with half a brain can see that he doesn't really mean this. He embodies all these things that aren't him to heighten his art. He's looking for some kind of reaction and emotional response, because that's what art elicits, an emotional response. We have rock stars. I don't think there's a drought of rock stars. And these rock stars are outspoken. Now, whether that's a good or bad thing is yet to be determined. But I think Matty Healy could eclipse all of these figures if given the time and room to do so. The 1975 has been a band for almost 20 years, but I think they're just hitting their stride right now. And Matty Healy is just now coming into his own as a frontman. And I think that he has the ability to be the greatest frontman of all time. Or at least one of them. Man, this video is getting long. Do you agree with me? Do you think that Matty Healy is one of the greatest living frontmen? Or do you, like Noel Gallagher, think he is a slack-jawed fuckwit? Let me know in the comments. That's gonna do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, I highly recommend crowd killing the like button. And if you like this video, who knows? Maybe someone else in your life would like this video. So share it with everyone you know. I'm trying to reach 150 subs, and liking, commenting, sharing, interacting with this video in any way really helps me to reach that goal. With all that being said, thank you for watching. As always, I'm Trevor. Stay uncool. That's the end of the video. Goodbye. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, you're too kind. Thank you. Thank you. I've got to go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.